Hello once again. My name is Robin Clark, and this is Chapter 4 of the Quick Start Guide for ExtendSim. This guide is broken down into 5 chapters. This video is on Chapter 4, where we will be expanding the model that we worked on in Chapter 3. In this chapter, we will add some more detail to the model built in the previous chapter. Then, we will discuss some ExtendSim features that can be used to enhance the model experience. Let's look at the modifications. Now, there will be 2 bays, one for washing only and one for washing and waxing. Approximately 25% of the cars want to be waxed, and it takes 8 minutes to wash and wax a car. You could start with the model you built in the previous chapter, or you can open up the completed Step 1 tutorial in the tutorial folder. We need to move the blocks around so that we have some room for the new activity block. Lasso the blocks as shown here. Then scoot them to the right. It should look like this now. We are now ready to add the additional activity for the second wash bay. We want to add the new activity block on a parallel connection, so hold down the Control key while you right-click on the Item Out connector of the Q block. Now select the activity block. This adds a second activity block to the model, in parallel with the first one, and connects the entry line queue. This is what it should look like now. Now we need to configure the new block. Open the activity dialog. First, set the delay to 6. Then, label the new block Wash Bay number 2. That should be it. Did you notice that the activities label got updated when we closed the dialog? Next, we need to connect the activity to the exit block. Hover the arrow over the input connector of the exit until it turns into a double-sided arrow. Then, click and drag down to expose an additional connector. This is what it should end up looking like. Now we can start with the connection process. Hover your mouse over the output connector of the activity. When the connector enlarges, that lets you know you can click on it. Go to the input connector on the exit block and click on it when it enlarges. Now we are connected. Let's move the blocks around some to clean it up. Next, we need to connect the second exit connector to the line chart. We will use the point and click method here. Click on the second output of the exit. Then click on the second input of the line chart. Now let's save the model. Now let's run the model. With the second wash bay, the entry line's queue length stays near 0 most of the time, as shown in the graph, and the queue block's results tab. Since we have not specified any rules concerning how the cars are routed to a wash bay, a car will go to the first available bay. However, if both bays are free, the car will go to the bay that was first connected in the model. This implicit routing is not obvious and is rarely what we want. Since we are going to insert a block after the entry line, frame select to move everything that is on the right of the entry line queue further right. Move it to the right. We need to delete the connection lines from the entry line to the 2 wash bays. To do this, click on each connection line and hit the delete key on the keyboard. Now we can add the select item out block. Right-click on the queue's item out connector. In the pop-up that appears, click the item library. Then pick the select item out block in the new pop-up. Now we want to connect the item in and the item out connectors of the blocks using the point and click method. Simply click on the output of the select item out and then click on the input of the activity. Repeat this for the bottom connector as well. Now we need to set up the select item out block. First, choose the option sequential. This causes the cars to be sequentially routed between the 2 bays. So that cars won't be blocked at any one bay when the other one is free, select If Output is Blocked, Item will try an unblocked output. Finally, label the block Route. Now we are done. The model should look like this. Now let's save the model. Now let's run the model. If you run the model, a similar number of cars have been washed as in the previous model. If you look at the dialog of the exit block, each wash bay have been used equally. Most car washes allows cars to have a wax applied after the wash, and the model assumptions state there is a wax option. So we said in the assumptions that the wash bay number 2 is where the cars go to get washed and waxed. Let's set that up. Open up the Select Item Out block again. First, change the selection condition to random. This will allow the cars to choose their path based on a random probability. Next, set the probabilities so that 75% go to the top and 25% of the cars go to the bottom path, to the second wash bay. Select the option, if output is blocked, item will wait for the blocked output. This will make the cars respect the probability designation rather than looking around for a free wash bay if their assigned bay is blocked. Now, open up the activity block. We need to make some adjustment there as well because it takes longer to wash and wax. First, change the delay to 8 to reflect the model assumption that waxing takes an additional 2 minutes after washing. Then, change the label for the block to be wash and wax. Now you can save the model. Now run the model again. Let's open up the line chart and look at the results. Notice the cars waiting, that's the green line. This makes sense because there is only one entry line, waxing takes longer than washing, and cars are limited to their specific bay. So even if a wash bay is available, a car waiting to be washed could be blocked by a car waiting to be waxed, further impacting processing. Now let's take a tour of the final car wash model. There is some interesting logic here in the equation block. This assigns a car type attribute to determine whether the cars only want to be washed or also want to be waxed. It also assigns a delay time attribute to determine how long it takes to process a car based on its car type. The Select Item Out is routing based on the car type. The activity blocks are reading an attribute set by the equation block to get the delay time. And finally, we're using a resource to model the attendants driving the cars through the car wash. Now, let's take a look at some of the UI features of ExtendSim. The car wash model you built in the past few tutorials could use some enhancements which we will touch on in this section. We won't cover them completely, but all of these topics are something you should practice. Named connections use text labels as outputs and inputs, causing data to jump from an output to an input without using connection lines. This model uses named connections to report the cars waiting. This allows users to greatly clean up their model when lines are going everywhere. Let's redo this named connection to see how to set it up. To add a named connection, simply double-click where you want the text to go. Type the text that you want to appear, then connect the connector to the text. Finally, do the same thing to the other side. Notice that it turned into a good connection once both sides were connected. Now let's talk about clones. Clones are exact copies from the block's dialog. Clones can be inputs or outputs or even charts. Let's go through the steps necessary to clone out a dialog item. Let's clone the mean arrival rate to the Inputs tab. Make sure you have both the Create block open as well as the notebook window shown here. First, click on the Clone Layer arrow. Next, click on the dialog you want to clone. Next, click where you want the clone object to go. And finally, don't forget to go back to the normal arrow when finished. That is how we clone both inputs and outputs. Now, let's look at an example of an interactive dashboard. ExtendSim has many tools for creating an interactive dashboard. The Buttons block from the Utilities library has several pre-built buttons that can be cloned onto the worksheet. The button shown will turn the 2D animation on and off. This is how we set it up. First, add the block to the model worksheet. Next, open the dialog. We need to set the function you want to apply. In this case, we'll allow it to turn the animation on and off. Next, we can rename the button title, or we could just leave the default name. In this case, we will leave it as the default button title. Next, we select the Clone Layer tool. Next, we clone the button onto the model worksheet. Now, as we click on the button, it will turn the animation on and off. Next, let's look at H-blocks. H-blocks is a method for representing multiple blocks or an entire submodel as one block within the model. This can significantly clean up a model. Let's go and make an H-block for the arrival process. First, select the block or blocks to include. Next, right-click on them and select Make Hierarchical. You must give the H-block a name and then click on the Create H-block button. This is the default icon for the H-block, but we can go in and change it to clip art if we want. Simply right-click on the block and select Open H-block Structure. Go to the Icon tab of the Structure window and change the icon to anything you want. You can paste clip art or pictures or make it your own image. And once we close it, we might need to clean up the lines a bit. Then we are done. This is how to set up an H-block. And finally, I want to provide you with some good references for your next step in learning discrete event modeling in ExtendSim. There are numerous examples that gets installed with ExtendSim. Check them out sometime. These examples illustrate concepts that tend to be in most models. Next, you should check out the ExtendSim user reference. There are two sections in particular that you should read. The first is the discrete event modeling section, and the next is the how-to section. I would also recommend you read Chapter 5 of the Quick Start Guide, as there is no video for this chapter. This concludes the video for Chapter 4 and the video series of the Discrete Event Quick Start Guide. I hope you have learned what you needed to on discrete event modeling in ExtendSim. Be sure and check out the other Quick Start Guides as well. My name is Robin Clark, and I want to thank you for listening.